stealing themselves. The pitiful remnants of the city's once proud populace descended. In ancient halls of kingship they found the Dawi, now naught but gnawed bones and scrapes of cloth. And there they saw by the dying light of their torches the myriad eyes about them, glittering like liquid moonlight as the rats closed in for the kill. The manlings stood back to back and fought for their lives, but against such implacable ferocity and countless numbers of the verminous horde, their weapons were useless. The tide of monstrous rats flowed over them one by one, dragging them down to be torn apart, the yellow chisel teeth sinking into their soft flesh, the dark-footed mass drowning their pitiful screams with their hideous chittering. The Skaven, sometimes known as the Rat-men, the Ratkin, or the children of the horned rat, are a malevolent and diabolical race of large humanoid rat creatures that inhabit a massive intercontinental underground empire known in their tongue simply as the Under-Empire. At the very heart of Skavendom lies the horrific city of Skavenblight, the species' capital city and the probable birthplace of the Skaven race. The Skavens as a whole are cruel, treacherous, and highly numerous as a species that have since spread their loathsome corruption to the farthest corners of the Warhammer world. From deep below the earth, these scavengers have built a vast empire whose military power and incomprehensible numbers has the potential to smother the kingdoms of the old world in a seething tide of violence and anarchy. It is believed by all of Skaven kind that the world is destined to be theirs, for they consider themselves the supreme master race, undeniably superior in every way to all the other races of the world. This unwavering belief stems from the promises made by their horrifically malevolent deity, known by many names, but his most well-known title is that of the Horned Rat. The Horned Rat is known as the harbinger of corruption and disease, the embodiment of all the things the Skaven are or ever will be, and whose worship over the Under-Empire is both supreme and absolute. Within the cruel hierarchy of the Under-Empire, the wishes and demands of the Horned Rat are issued and maintained by the ruthless tyranny of the Council of 13, an organisation that consists of the 12 most powerful warlords within the Under-Empire, whilst the 13th seat is in reserve for the Horned Rat himself. It is due to the Council's harsh tyranny that the Under-Empire remained unified in some shape or form for centuries, for no one would ever hope to overcome the legions of warriors that the Council has under their iron-fisted rule. Out of all the mortal civilizations within the greater world, no single race, neither the ruthless barbarian tribes of the north nor the savage greenskins of the east, can be compared in terms of instability to that of the Skaven Under-Empire. The race as a whole is extremely divided, often far more divided than perhaps any other race known in existence. Such disunion and ruthless lack of cooperation stems from the Skaven's insatiable need to survive, thrive, and reign tyrannical over its other brethren. To every Skaven, there is no such thing as pity, remorse, compassion, or cooperation. There is simply survival. Survival in a turbulent society that only spares those that possess the brute strength, extreme cunning, and the vicious instinct to outmaneuver and kill the opposition, no matter the cost or the body count of either friend or foe. Though no matter how divided their race may be, they are nonetheless unified in a single cause, and that cause is to conquer the surface world and bring about the Great Ascendancy, where it is said that the Horned Rat's children will swarm across the face of the earth and claim all of it as their own. I really think Skaven are one of the real feats of Warhammer Fantasy as a series. They're one of my personal favourite races, but I just think the construction of their lore and the whole vibe of the race and their culture that Games Workshop have created is just incredible. And it's such a deep and detailed depiction of what sentient rats would be like if they evolved, and like just the whole psychology. This is something I love about
Games Workshop's lore in general is it's so deep, and they get right down into the actual brain of these species that they're making up. Like, this goes for the orcs as well. But they put these differences in the psychology of the actual race, and you can see how that changes their actual culture, if you know what I mean, right? So with the Skaven, it's the cunning and individualistic nature, and the way they never adhere to a certain banner unless they're basically just like whipped into line. And on the battle map, this is going to manifest itself as very low morale, but high numbers. And I feel like Skaven are going to be really hard for CA to depict well in a Total War game, because the way they would attack cities is from beneath. So are they going to do that, or are they just going to piss off the fans and make them attack walls like everyone else has to do? They need to reform the siege system in general, to be fair, and make it more complex and like legit. I mean, I've recently been playing a bit more of a Total War Attila on the Heraclius mod, as you may have seen, and the kind of shit that you get like traps that you can just lay around your city and barricades that you can wall off certain streets and stuff like that. And it's really annoying that they've kind of regressed this hard into like an even less complicated siege than you would find in like medieval Total War 1, which is pixelated graphics and you can barely recognize anyone as a human. But I reckon an update for sieges will be on the way. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see if they allow Skaven to attack cities from the sewers, like they actually would be in the lore. Another thing they're going to have to balance is the whole swarming mechanic of the Skaven. They're supposed to have these massive units and of like insane numbers on the tabletop, but very low morale. But they have this mechanic where the more ranks in a unit, as in the lines of soldiers, each line is a rank, and for each extra rank they have, they get a rank bonus, which adds to their leadership. And how it works in the tabletop is that you roll a leadership roll at the end of every fight or something to see if your unit has run away or not. And obviously the higher leadership you have, the less likely your unit's to run away. So if you have a massive unit of Skaven, because they have this whole swarming mentality, and they feel a lot more safe if there's loads of Skaven around them. This is another element to the rat psychology that they're bringing into the lore. They won't run away. But it's important to know for people that don't know anything about this from the tabletop background, the Skaven aren't just swarming with infantry. They have monstrous units like rat ogres and giant rats that kind of run around like cavalry. As in, like, normal rats. Well, more kind of normal rats, not smart, sentient rats on their two legs. Just huge kind of rats that are like warhounds, basically. And also just swarms of standard rats, although I don't know if they're going to put these in the game, because they might be kind of hard to balance. Yeah, also they have war machines that shoot, like, warp energy. The Skaven are really into this thing called warpstone, which has chaos energy inside it, as far as I understand, and can be used to bolster your magic. And they basically get all their energy for their war machines and stuff like that from the warpstone. They usually attack places if there's a lot of warpstone in the area. Yeah, they'll do anything to get warpstone, essentially. Nagash, in fact, who's the guy who started necromancy. This is way back in history, Warhammer history. But Nagash, the original necromancer, Dark Lord, evil guy, he was allied with the Skaven because he had loads of warpstone in his land, and he used to just give the Skaven warpstone, and they would just do his bidding, basically, within reason, as long as he gave them the warpstone. They also have a very potent firearm that shoots warpstone bullets that are very armor-piercing, called Jeziels. And yeah, they're one of the most technologically advanced races, if not the most technologically advanced. But anyway, like I was saying, with the whole aspect of the psychology that they work into the lore of these different species, if you go by the theory of the whole idea that fantasy depictions, or at least the best fantasy depictions, are kind of aspects of the human brain or the human psyche that are sort of just projected onto something else, but it makes sense in your head the most when it's an aspect of the human brain, because it's something you can relate to a certain extent. I feel like Skaven is a example of that. The Skaven race depicts the side of the human psyche that is all about the rat race and personal advancement of yourself over others, because everyone has this side to them inside where you're kind of just like, I wish I was the most successful. And basically every Skaven is just completely like that. Like, they don't give a shit about any other Skaven in the whole race, and they all kind of consider themselves to be the best. So yeah, next time your friend tells you something good that happened to them in their life, or they had some kind of lucky break, landed that big job, and you know they weren't necessarily qualified for it, but they kind of managed to gab it, or managed to persuade their way into it. You have that little side of your personality inside you, that little voice that tells you,
that should have happened to me. I wish that was me that happened to.
Congratulations, you're a Skaven. You're a rat man. But yeah, I do believe that theory is true. All the inspiration that we can get for different fantasy cultures now, it comes from our own race, doesn't it? It makes sense if you actually think about it. Until we start meeting enough alien races that we can kind of make races based on kind of like a combination of those different races or something like that. Really. But I mean, even then, all we know is our own minds at the end of the day. So that's why I feel like this kind of thing just makes sense and is real. The best fantasy depictions are things that parallel the real world or the real human mind. So yeah, that's a thought for today. I'll make some more videos about the Skaven, because I've kind of just done a little introduction so far. But I'm going to cover the Skaven clans. The main Skaven clans, at least, because there's loads of little ones, but there's some pretty big clans that have the major influence over what happens in the Skaven world, and I'll delve more into their biology and their history and different stuff like that. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my slightly strange analysis of fantasy, and have a nice day.